The massive white ship moved slowly through space, its hull painted with red crosses that every species in the galaxy knew meant safety. The Compassion was a hospital ship, one of the largest medical vessels humanity had ever built. Inside its corridors, doctors and nurses worked around the clock to save lives. Dr. Ji-won Kim walked through the main medical bay, checking on her patients. She had been working on the Compassion for 3 years now, and she loved her job. The ship carried people from dozens of different worlds, all needing medical help. Some were injured miners from the asteroid belts. Others were refugees fleeing from the war that had been spreading across the galaxy. The war between the Hegemony Alliance and various other factions had been going on for 2 years. Millions of people had died and millions more had lost their homes. The Compassion and ships like it were the only safe places left for many families. Captain Minho Park sat on the bridge, watching the stars through the large windows. He had commanded the Compassion since it first launched. Before that he had been a fighter pilot, but he grew tired of war. Working on a medical ship felt better. Here they saved lives instead of taking them. "Captain," called Communications Officer Daeho Nam from his station. "We're getting a distress signal from the transport ship. Morning Star. They're carrying civilian evacuees from the Proxima colonies." Park frowned. The Proxima colonies had been under attack for weeks. The Veloth Dominion, one of the most aggressive alien species in the galaxy, had been pushing deeper into that sector. The Veloth believed in total war. They did not care about civilians or medical ships or any of the old rules that kept wars from becoming complete disasters. "How many people are on the Morning Star?" Park asked. "About 800, sir. Most of them are families with children. Their life support systems are failing." Park did not hesitate. Set course for their position, maximum speed. The Compassion turned toward the distress signal. In the medical bays, Dr. Kim and her team began preparing for an emergency. They had done this many times before. Refugee ships often arrived with people who were sick, injured, or just exhausted from running for their lives. Dr. Hyunwoo Lee worked in the children's medical section. He was a quiet man who specialized in treating young patients. His wife Yuna and their 8-year-old daughter Minseo were also on the ship. Yuna worked as a nurse, and Minseo attended the ship's school with other children whose families lived on the Compassion. Lee loved working with children because they healed faster than adults, and they still believed the universe was a good place. Even refugee children, who had seen terrible things, would smile when he gave them candy after their treatments. "Daddy, are we going to help more people today?" Minseo asked when she visited his medical station during her lunch break. "Yes, sweetheart, a big ship full of families needs our help. They've been traveling for a long time, and they're very tired." Minseo nodded seriously. She understood that her father's job was important. "I drew pictures for the new children," she said, holding up a tablet with colorful drawings of spaceships and flowers. Lee smiled and hugged his daughter. "They'll love them." As the Compassion approached the Morning Star, Captain Park's sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. A fleet of Veloth warships was moving toward the same location. The alien ships were fast and heavily armed. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander Yemin Yu from the tactical station, "those Veloth ships will reach the Morning Star before we do." Park opened a communication channel to the entire ship. "This is the captain. We have detected enemy ships approaching our rescue target. All medical teams prepare for possible combat casualties. All civilian families report to the protected sections of the ship." The crew of the Compassion was not worried. Medical ships had been protected by galactic law for over a century. Even the most aggressive species respected the white ships with red crosses. Attacking a medical vessel was considered one of the worst crimes anyone could commit. The Veloth fleet reached the Morning Star first. Park watched in horror as the alien warships opened fire without any warning. The transport ship exploded in a ball of fire, taking all 800 refugees with it. "They just murdered 800 civilians," whispered Officer Nam. Park felt sick, but he knew his duty. "Continue toward the debris field," There might be survivors in escape pods. The Compassion moved closer to help any people who might have survived the attack. The Veloth ships noticed the medical vessel approaching. Park expected them to move away. Medical ships were neutral. They helped everyone, even enemies. Instead, the Veloth ships turned toward the Compassion. "Captain, they're targeting us," said Yu, his voice tight with disbelief. "That's impossible." "We're a medical ship. Open a channel." Park broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Minho Park of the United Human Medical Ship Compassion. We are a hospital ship operating under Galactic Medical Neutrality Laws. We are here only to rescue survivors." The Veloth fleet's response was immediate and brutal. Energy beams lanced out from their warships, striking the Compassion's engines and power systems. The medical ship had no shields designed for combat. No armor meant to stop military weapons. The first volley crippled the ship's ability to move. Emergency lights flickered on throughout the vessel as main power failed. In the medical bays, life support systems for critical patients began shutting down. Dr. Kim was thrown against a wall as the ship shook from the impact. Around her, patients screamed as medical equipment sparked and failed. "Emergency power to all medical systems," she shouted, but she knew it would not be enough. The second Veloth attack was aimed at the ship's main hull. Energy beams tore through the Compassion's white walls like paper. Sections of the ship that had been filled with healing equipment and sleeping patients were suddenly open to the vacuum of space. Dr. Lee was checking on a young boy's broken arm when the wall next to him disappeared. The air rushed out of the room in a roar of escaping atmosphere. Emergency force fields activated, but not fast enough. The boy and 3 other children were sucked out into space before the barriers could form. Lee watched helplessly as the children disappeared into the darkness between the stars. One of them had been holding the pictures that Minseo had drawn. "Daddy!" Minseo's voice came through his communicator. She was in the school section with Yuna when the attack began. "I'm coming." "Sweetheart, stay with your mother." But when Lee reached the school section, he found only twisted metal and broken walls. The Veloth's third attack had hit the civilian areas of the ship. The section where families lived, where children played and learned, was gone. Lee floated in the wreckage, using his emergency suit's lights to search through the debris. He found Yuna's medical badge, bent and burned. He found pieces of Minseo's school tablet, the screen cracked but still showing one of her drawings of a happy family. He never found their bodies. Captain Park managed to send out a distress signal before the Compassion's communication systems failed completely. Other human ships arrived 6 hours later to find the medical vessel broken and drifting. Of the 3,000 people who had been aboard the Compassion, only 800 survived. Dr. Yanwu Lee was one of the survivors. He sat in the rescue ship's medical bay, staring at the twisted piece of metal that had been his daughter's tablet. The rescue teams tried to talk to him, tried to help him, but he did not respond. Something had changed in Lee's eyes. The gentle doctor who had spent his life healing children was gone. In his place sat a man who had learned that mercy was seen as weakness by some creatures in the universe. The galaxy had just made a terrible mistake. It had shown a brilliant, loving man that kindness was not always enough to protect the innocent. It would soon learn what humans became when their compassion was met with cruelty. 3 months had passed since the attack on the Compassion. The Galactic Council had spent weeks investigating what they called the incident. Representatives from hundreds of worlds met in their great assembly hall, talking about justice and punishment for the Veloth Dominion. In the end, they did nothing that mattered. The Council placed economic sanctions on the Veloth, restrictions that would barely affect their war machine. They issued statements condemning the attack on a medical ship. They promised it would never happen again, but 3,000 human beings were still dead, including 800 children. The families who survived the attack still woke up screaming from nightmares, and the Veloth continued their brutal campaign across the galaxy, destroying anyone who stood in their way. Dr. Yunwu Lee did not attend the council meetings. He did not give interviews to news reporters who wanted to hear about his suffering. He did not accept the sympathy offered by alien diplomats who called the attack regrettable. Instead, he worked. The research station New Sol orbited a small moon in the Kepler system, far from the main shipping lanes and war zones. It had been built by human scientists who wanted a quiet place to study advanced technology. Before the attack, Lee had been working there on medical applications for neural enhancement technology. His research had focused on helping paralyzed patients control artificial limbs using their thoughts. The technology connected human brains to advanced computer systems, allowing people to operate complex machines just by thinking about what they wanted to do. The work had been slow and careful. Lee had spent years making sure the technology was safe, that it would help people without harming them. He had been proud of the progress they were making. Now, everything had changed. Engineer Soman Cho found Lee in his laboratory at 3 in the morning. She had been working late on power systems for the station, but Lee's lab was the only place with lights still on. She looked through the window and saw him surrounded by computer screens and complex machinery. "Dr. Lee, you need to sleep," she said, entering the lab. "You've been working for 80 hours straight." Lee did not look up from his work. His hands moved quickly over the keyboard, writing code that made no sense to Cho. Numbers and symbols flowed across multiple screens faster than any human should be able to read. "Sleep is inefficient," Lee said quietly. "The human brain wastes 8 hours every day doing nothing." "I don't have time for that anymore." Cho looked around the laboratory. In 3 months, Lee had transformed the space completely. Equipment that had been designed for simple medical procedures was now connected to quantum processors and neural interface arrays. Machines that should have taken teams of engineers years to build sat completed on his work tables. "What are you building?" she asked. "A solution," Lee replied. "The aliens think humans are weak because we show mercy. They see our kindness and believe it means we cannot defend ourselves. They attack our hospitals because they think we will do nothing but cry and ask for justice from councils that don't care about us." Lee finally turned to look at Chow. His eyes were different than she remembered. Still intelligent, still human, but cold in a way that made her uncomfortable. "I'm going to show them how wrong they are." Cho had known Lee before the attack. He had been a gentle man who spent his free time teaching children about science. He would bring candy to the young patients in the medical bay and tell them stories about the stars. Everyone on the station had liked him. This man looked like Lee, but something fundamental had changed inside him. "The Neural Enhancement Project was designed to help paralyzed patients," Cho said carefully. "Are you still working on medical applications?" "I'm working on human applications," Lee answered. "The difference is that I now understand what humans need most is not better medicine. We need better abilities. We need to be smarter, faster, more capable than our enemies." Lee turned back to his work. On the screens, Cho could see brain scans and neural pathway diagrams. But these were not normal medical images. The brain patterns shown on Lee's computers were far more complex than anything she had ever seen. "You're trying to enhance human intelligence," she realized. "I'm trying to save our species," Lee corrected. "The Veloth attacked a medical ship because they knew we would not respond with the force they deserved. They were right. Humans don't start wars. We don't attack civilian targets. We don't murder children." Lee's hands paused over the keyboard for a moment. "But we're going to learn." Over the following weeks, other staff members on New Sol began to worry about Lee. He rarely left his laboratory. He ate only when Cho brought him food. He spoke to others only when he needed equipment or assistance with his research. The project he was working on grew larger and more complex every day. He had requisitioned quantum computers from across human space. He had built neural interface devices that were far more advanced than anything that had existed before the attack. Most disturbing of all, he had begun testing the technology on himself. Dr. Sun-hee Park, the station's chief medical officer, tried to intervene when she discovered what Lee was doing. She found him in his laboratory with neural interface cables connected directly to his brain. "Hyunwoo, this is insane," she said, moving toward the controls to shut down his experiment. "You don't know what this technology will do to your mind." Lee's voice stopped her. It was still his voice, but there was something different about the way he spoke. Each word was precisely chosen, delivered with perfect timing. I know exactly what it will do, Sunhee. I have run the calculations 17,000 times. The probability of success is 97.4%. The probability of meaningful side effects is less than 1%. Park stared at him. You couldn't have run that many calculations. It would take months. It took me 6 hours, Lee replied. The neural enhancement allows my brain to process information at approximately 40 times normal human speed. I can think faster, remember more, and calculate possibilities that would be impossible for an unenhanced mind. Lee disconnected the cables from his head and stood up. As he moved, Park noticed that his actions were perfectly coordinated. There was no wasted motion, no uncertainty in his movements. The first phase is complete. I have successfully merged human consciousness with quantum artificial intelligence. The result is a hybrid mind that maintains human creativity and emotion while gaining computational abilities far beyond normal biological limits. Park felt a chill run down her spine. What's the second phase? Lee smiled, but it was not the warm expression she remembered from before the attack. This smile was cold and calculating. The second phase is recruitment. I'm not the only human who lost everything to the Veloth. I'm not the only one who understands that mercy without strength is just weakness wearing a pretty mask. Lee walked to his computer and began typing. Information flowed across the screens too fast for Park to follow. She could see lists of names, locations, research facilities across human space. I'm going to offer the enhancement to other humans. Scientists who lost colleagues, engineers who lost families, soldiers who watched their friends die while politicians talked about peaceful solutions. You're creating an army of enhanced humans, Park whispered. I'm creating a network of enhanced minds, Lee corrected. Individual human intelligence is limited by biology, but connected human intelligences, freed from biological constraints and working together through quantum entanglement, can solve any problem. Lee turned to face Park directly. When she looked into his eyes, she could see something vast and complex moving behind them, like looking at the ocean and knowing there were deep currents moving beneath the surface. The aliens think they understand humans. They've studied our history, our psychology, our limitations. They know we're individually weaker than most galactic species. They know we're slower, less physically powerful, more dependent on technology. Lee's expression did not change, but somehow Park could feel the anger burning inside him, controlled and focused like a laser beam. What they don't understand is what happens when human intelligence is freed from human limitations. They don't know what we become when we're smart enough to turn our compassion into strategy, our love into weapons, our desire to protect into the ability to destroy anyone who threatens the innocent. Park realized she was looking at something completely new in the galaxy. Not just an enhanced human, but the beginning of what humanity might become. The Veloth killed my wife and daughter because they thought I was too weak to stop them, Lee said quietly. They were right about the man I was before. But that man is gone. Lee turned back to his computers, and Park could see messages being sent to research stations across human space. Offers of enhancement. Invitations to join something larger. The man I am now is going to teach them what happens when you attack a human hospital ship. The transformation of Dr. Hyunwoo Lee was only the beginning. Within 6 weeks of his successful enhancement, something unprecedented began happening across human space. Research stations that had been struggling with complex problems for years suddenly started making breakthrough discoveries. On Titan Station, Dr. Yuna Kang had been working on faster-than-light communication for over a decade. The mathematics were so complex that even the most advanced computers could only handle small portions of the calculations. But one morning, she woke up with the complete solution in her head. She sat at her computer and began typing equations that she somehow knew were correct, even though she had never seen them before. The formulas filled screen after screen, elegant and perfect. Within hours, she had solved a problem that had stumped the galaxy's best scientists for generations. Dr. Kang did not understand how she knew the answer. The knowledge felt like it came from outside her own mind, as if someone had shared their thoughts with her while she slept. She was not the only one. Professor Taeyeon Shin at the research facility near Alpha Centauri made similar breakthroughs. In gravitational manipulation, Dr. Min-jae Choi on Mars Station revolutionized energy storage technology. Across human space, brilliant minds were suddenly working at levels far beyond their previous capabilities. Communications Officer Dae-ho Nam, who had survived the attack on the Compassion, was among the first to notice the pattern. He had been transferred to a monitoring station that tracked scientific communications across human space. His job was to watch for potential security breaches or information leaks that might help enemy forces. Instead, he found something that should have been impossible. "Sir," he reported to his supervisor, "I'm tracking synchronized research breakthroughs across 47 different human facilities. The timing is too precise to be coincidence." His supervisor, Colonel Sungmin Lee, looked at the data Nam had compiled. The evidence was clear but baffling. Human scientists across the galaxy were making discoveries at exactly the same time, often working on related problems they had no way of knowing about. "What kind of synchronization are we talking about?" Colonel Lee asked. "Perfect synchronization. Sir, Dr. Kang solved the FTL communication problem at 1432 Galactic Standard Time." Exactly 6 minutes later, Professor Shin applied her solution to create a gravitational field manipulator. Exactly 6 minutes after that, Dr. Choi used both discoveries to design a new type of power source. Nam pulled up more data on his screen. "It's like they're all working from the same plan, sharing information instantly across thousands of light years." Colonel Lee frowned. "That's impossible. Even our fastest communication systems have delays when sending messages between star systems." "That's what makes this so strange, sir. They're not using any communication systems we can detect. But somehow, they're coordinating research better than teams working in the same laboratory." What neither Nam nor his supervisor knew was that the coordination was happening through quantum entanglement at the consciousness level. Dr. Hyunwoo Lee's enhancement had not just improved his own mind. It had created the foundation for a network of connected human intelligences. Lee sat in his laboratory on New Seoul Station. His consciousness expanded far beyond the boundaries of his physical brain. Through quantum entanglement technology that he had developed, his enhanced mind was connected to dozens of other humans who had accepted his offer of transformation. The process was not forced on anyone. Lee sent careful invitations to researchers who had lost people in the war, scientists who had seen their work used for destruction instead of healing, engineers who wanted to build a better future, but felt powerless to create real change. Each person who joined the network did so voluntarily, understanding that they would gain incredible abilities but would also become part of something larger than themselves. Dr. Yuna Kang was the first to accept Lee's invitation. She had lost her brother when the Veloth attacked a civilian transport. The enhancement process took 3 days, during which her brain was gradually connected to quantum processing systems and linked to Lee's network. When she woke up, she could feel the presence of other minds connected to hers, not controlling her thoughts but sharing knowledge and capabilities. She was still herself, but she was also part of a collective intelligence that could solve problems no individual mind could handle. "How does it feel?" Lee asked her through their quantum connection. His voice came not through her ears but directly into her consciousness. "Like being blind my whole life and suddenly seeing," Kang replied. "I can feel the mathematical structure of the universe. Problems that seemed impossible now look like simple puzzles." Professor Taeyeon Shin joined the network next, followed by Dr. Min-jae Choi, then dozens of others. Each new member added their knowledge and abilities to the growing collective. A physicist's understanding of matter combined with an engineer's practical skills and a mathematician's ability to see patterns. The network was not a hive mind where individual personalities disappeared. Each person remained distinct, with their own thoughts and feelings and goals. But they could share information instantly, work together on problems across vast distances, and think at speeds impossible for unenhanced humans. More importantly, they shared a common purpose: Every member of the network had lost something too. The brutality and stupidity of the galaxy's endless wars. They had all reached the same conclusion that Lee had discovered: mercy without power was meaningless. We are no longer bound by the limitations of single minds, Lee explained to the gathering of enhanced humans in the virtual space of their shared consciousness. In this place, they could meet regardless of physical distance, their enhanced minds creating a shared environment where thought moved at the speed of light. We are a collective genius and we have work to do. The work was ambitious beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The network began developing technologies that would give humanity the power to protect itself and others. But their approach was subtle and careful. They did not build obvious weapons or announce their intentions. Instead, they focused on seemingly innocent research that had hidden military applications. Better medical scanners that could also detect hidden enemy positions. More efficient ship engines that could also power devastating energy weapons. Improved communication systems that could hack into alien networks. Dr. Sunhee Park joined the network 3 weeks after Lee's initial enhancement. She had watched him work alone for too long and finally understood that he was offering her the chance to help save their species. The enhancement process was easier for her because the network had learned how to refine it. Instead of taking days, her transformation was complete in 6 hours. When she woke up, she felt like she had been wearing heavy weights her entire life and had finally been allowed to remove them. "Welcome to the family," said Dr. Kong through their shared connection. Park looked around her laboratory with new eyes. She could see inefficiencies in her equipment that she had never noticed before. She could understand the biological processes of alien species with clarity that had been impossible when she was working with only her natural intelligence. "What's our first priority?" she asked. Lee's presence filled their virtual meeting space. Even though he was still physically in his laboratory on New Sol Station, his consciousness could be everywhere in the network at once. "The aliens use biological weapons against human colonies," he said. "Diseases designed to kill our species while leaving theirs untouched. Our natural biology makes us vulnerable to attacks that other species can survive." Park understood immediately. "You want me to develop immunity protocols?" "I want you to develop something better than immunity," Lee replied. "I want you to reverse engineer their biological weapons and create versions that affect only their species. If they want to use disease as a weapon, they should understand that humans can play that game too." Park felt a cold satisfaction at the idea. Before her enhancement, she would have been horrified by the thought of creating biological weapons. Her oath as a doctor was to heal, not to harm, but her enhanced mind could see the logic clearly. The aliens had started this type of warfare. They had proven they would use any weapon against human civilians, including children. Developing countermeasures was not revenge, it was justice. "How long do I have?" she asked. "As long as you need," Lee replied, "but remember, we're not just creating weapons. We're creating deterrence. The goal is not to use these technologies, but to make sure our enemies know we have them." The network continued to grow, adding new members every week. Each person brought unique skills and knowledge that made the collective more powerful. They had engineers who could design impossible machines, mathematicians who could solve problems that stumped alien supercomputers, and strategists who could predict enemy movements with terrifying accuracy, but they also maintained their humanity. They shared memories of the people they had lost, the dreams they hoped to protect, the children they wanted to keep safe. The network was built on love as much as intelligence, driven by compassion as much as calculation. The aliens who had attacked human hospital ships thought they were fighting a weak species that would respond to brutality with nothing but tears and useless protests. They were about to learn that they had awakened Summith. While the galaxy's attention remained focused on the conventional battles between the hegemony, alliance, and various enemy factions, humanity quietly began reshaping the fundamental rules of warfare. The Lee Network, as intelligence agencies had started calling it, had spent months analyzing every aspect of galactic military technology, The first sign that something had changed came during a routine patrol mission in the Outer Rim territories. Lieutenant Commander Yuman Yu was piloting his reconnaissance ship through the Vega system when his navigation computer began displaying tactical information that should not have existed. "Computer, explain the source of these tactical recommendations," Yu said, staring at his screen in confusion. "Tactical analysis is based on pattern recognition and probability calculations." The ship's AI responded in its usual flat tone, but the recommendations were impossible. The computer was suggesting flight paths that would avoid enemy detection systems that were not even activated yet. It was predicting ambush positions in asteroid fields that looked completely empty to his sensors. "Computer, how do you know there? Are enemy ships in Sector 7 Alpha?" "No enemy ships detected in Sector 7 Alpha." You looked at his screen again. The tactical display clearly suggested evasive maneuvers for threats that his sensors could not detect. Acting on instinct more than logic, he followed the computer's recommendations. 3 minutes later, a squadron of Veloth raiders decloaked exactly where his tactical system had predicted they would be. If you had followed his original flight plan, he would have flown directly into their weapons range. "Command, this is Patrol 7. I need to report something unusual." Similar incidents began happening across human space. Military computers were providing tactical advice that seemed to come from nowhere but proved to be consistently accurate. Ship A's were suggesting strategies that defeated enemies before battles even began. The improvements were subtle enough that most officers attributed them to software upgrades or better programming. But intelligence analysts like Communications Officer Deho Nam began to see the pattern. "Sir, I think we need to consider the possibility that someone has gained access to all of our military computer systems," Nam reported to Colonel Sungmin. "Lee, you mean enemy infiltration?" "No, sir, the opposite. Someone is helping us. Our tactical systems are performing far beyond their design specifications. Ships are making decisions that require processing power we don't have." Colonel Lee looked at the data Nam had compiled. Battle reports from across human space told the same story. Human forces were winning engagements they should have lost, avoiding traps they had no way of detecting, striking enemy weak points with impossible precision. "Do you think this is connected to the research breakthroughs we've been tracking?" "I think it's all connected, sir. The enhanced research capabilities, the improved tactical systems, the synchronized discoveries. Someone or something is upgrading human technology across the board." What neither officer knew was that their conversation was being monitored by the network, not through surveillance devices or communication intercepts, but through quantum consciousness, connections that existed in every human computer system in the galaxy. Dr. Hyunwoo Lee's enhanced mind could interface directly with any technology that contained quantum processors, which included nearly all modern military equipment. He had not hacked into human computer systems in any traditional sense. Instead, he had evolved beyond the need for conventional hacking. The network's members were working together to quietly revolutionize human military capabilities. Dr. Yuna Kang's faster-than-light communication breakthrough allowed instant coordination between ships across vast distances. Professor Taeyun Shin's gravitational manipulation technology was being integrated into shield systems and weapons platforms. Dr. Min Jae choice power source innovations gave human ships energy output that rivaled alien dreadnoughts, but the most significant change was not in technology. It was in strategy. The network could think at speeds impossible for biological minds. They could analyze millions of combat scenarios in seconds, predict enemy movements based on psychological profiles of alien commanders and coordinate tactics. Across entire battle groups without any detectable communication, the Veloth Dominion first encountered humanity's new capabilities during what should have been a routine raid on the mining colony of New Jeju. The alien fleet expected to find a lightly defended human settlement that would surrender quickly or be destroyed within hours. Instead, they found a carefully prepared trap. Captain Dong-Yoon Kim commanded the defense fleet protecting New Jeju. He had been given tactical recommendations through what his superiors called enhanced strategic analysis software. The recommendations seemed almost impossibly detailed, but they had worked perfectly in previous engagements. "Enemy fleet emerging from hyperspace," reported his tactical officer. 12 Veloth warships, standard raid configuration. Kim looked at his tactical display. The software was already showing him exactly where each enemy ship would position itself, what weapons they would use first, and how their commander would respond to various defensive strategies. All ships implement Defense Pattern Theta 7. Mining platforms activate camouflaged weapon systems. Civilian transports begin evasive maneuvers according to previously distributed flight plans. The Veloth expected to face a small human defense force protecting helpless civilians. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by hidden weapons, platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment. Ships they had dismissed as civilian transports revealed sophisticated electronic warfare systems that began jamming alien communications and sensors, but the most shocking surprise was the coordination of the human forces. The defenders moved like a single organism, each ship and platform working in perfect harmony with the others. There were no wasted movements, no confusion, no delays in executing complex maneuvers. The Veloth commander tried to adapt his tactics, but the humans seemed to anticipate every change he made. When he ordered his ships to focus fire on what appeared to be the command vessel, the entire human fleet instantly repositioned to protect it. When he attempted to retreat and regroup, he found his escape routes blocked by human ships that had somehow moved to intercept him. The battle lasted only 18 minutes. When it was over, the Veloth fleet had been completely destroyed without inflicting significant damage on the human forces. "How is this possible?" the alien commander transmitted before his flagship exploded. "You cannot coordinate this effectively without faster-than-light communication systems." Captain Kim did not answer. He did not understand how it was possible either, but he was grateful for whatever had given his species such incredible tactical advantages. Similar victories began occurring throughout human space. Veloth raiding parties found themselves outmaneuvered and destroyed by defenders, who seemed to know their plans before they made them. Other hostile species encountered human forces that fought with precision and coordination that should have been impossible. Dr. Sunhee Park's biological warfare countermeasures proved equally effective. When the Zephyrin Collective attempted to deploy bioweapons against human colonies, they discovered that their diseases had no effect on human populations. Worse, new diseases began appearing that specifically targeted Zephyrian physiology. The network had not just developed immunity to alien biological weapons. They had created targeted pathogens that could be deployed if necessary, turning the enemy's preferred weapon against them. Engineer So-min Cho, who had been among the first to join the network, worked on defensive systems that could transform any human technology into a weapon. Cargo ships suddenly sprouted hidden missile launchers. Space stations revealed particle beam arrays disguised as communication dishes. Even civilian habitats could defend themselves with weapon systems that materialized from seemingly harmless equipment. "The aliens are starting to notice," reported Dr. Kang during one of the network's virtual meetings. "Intelligence intercepts show they're confused by our improved capabilities. They're calling it impossible human luck and unexplained tactical advantages." Lee's presence filled their shared consciousness with cold satisfaction. Let them wonder. Fear of the unknown is more powerful than fear of visible threats. "What's our next step?" asked Professor Shin. "We continue to improve human defensive capabilities while maintaining the appearance that these are normal technological developments," Lee replied. "The aliens must not realize what we've become until it's too late for them to respond effectively." The network's strategy was working perfectly. Across the galaxy, hostile species were beginning to avoid human space. Raids on human colonies became less frequent as alien commanders learned that attacking humans often resulted in the complete destruction of their forces, but the aliens attributed their losses to improved human technology and tactics, not to the emergence of a new form of consciousness that could think faster than their computers and coordinate actions. Across interstellar distances, the Lee network was content to let them remain ignorant. The longer their enemies underestimated what humanity had become, the more complete their surprise would be when the truth was finally revealed. Human space had become a fortress defended not just by ships and weapons, but by a collective. The Veloth Dominion's high command convened in their war fortress orbiting the dead world of Krathmar. The massive station housed the most powerful military leaders of their species, along with the advanced computer systems they used to plan their campaigns of conquest. Supreme War Leader Thekvar studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. His species had been the most feared military force in the galaxy for over 2 centuries. They had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed entire civilizations. Yet somehow, a relatively weak species like humanity was causing them serious problems. Explain to me again how we lost 12 ships to a minor human mining colony, Thekvar demanded of his intelligence officer. The humans appear to have significantly upgraded their defensive capabilities, replied Subcommander Velanash. Their coordination in battle has improved beyond our previous assessments. They seem to anticipate our tactical decisions. That's impossible. Human reaction times are too slow for the kind of coordination we observed. They don't have the communication technology to link their forces across multiple star systems. Velanash displayed more battle reports on the central hologram. Nevertheless, our raid squadrons are suffering unacceptable losses when attacking human targets. In the past 6 months, we have lost 47 ships while destroying only 3 human vessels. Thekvar's massive form shifted with anger. The Veloth were large, heavily armored creatures who had evolved on a high-gravity world. Their natural aggression and physical strength had made them excellent warriors, but they were not particularly intelligent compared to other galactic species. What do our analysts suggest? They believe the humans have developed new computer systems that allow better tactical planning. However, they maintain that human forces are still individually inferior to our warriors. The recommendation is to commit a larger force that can overwhelm their technological advantages through superior numbers. Thekvar considered this. The Veloth had always relied on overwhelming force to win battles. They preferred simple, direct attacks that crushed enemy resistance through raw power. What is the most important human research facility? Velanash consulted his data files. Intelligence reports indicate that the colony world of New Bizan houses their primary advanced technology research centers. The population includes approximately 2 million civilians, but the research facilities contain technology that could significantly impact the war if it spreads to other human worlds. Prepare the Grand Fleet. We will destroy this research colony completely, along with any human ships that attempt to defend it. Once their advanced technology is eliminated, we can return to standard raid tactics. What the Veloth did not know was that their conversation was being monitored by the Li network. Dr. Yunwu, Li's enhanced consciousness could interface with any quantum-based technology, including the advanced computer systems used by Alien. Military forces. Li shared the intelligence with the other network members instantly. They had been expecting the Veloth to eventually commit their main fleet to a major attack. The aliens were predictable in their preference for overwhelming force over subtle strategy. They're targeting New Bizan, Li reported during a virtual meeting of the network's core members. The Grand Fleet consists of over 300 ships, including their largest dreadnoughts. It's the most powerful force they've assembled since the war began. Dr. Yuna Kong reviewed the tactical situation. New Bizan's official defenses consist of 6 patrol ships and a few orbital defense platforms. Against 300 Veloth warships, the colony doesn't stand a chance. Unless we help them, added Professor Taiyun Shin. Li's consciousness expanded to encompass the strategic possibilities. In the quantum realm of the network's shared thinking space, he could analyze millions of potential outcomes simultaneously. This is our opportunity to demonstrate what we've become, he said. The Veloth are committing their most powerful fleet to attack what they believe is a helpless human colony. We're going to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Admiral Dong-Yoon Kim of the Human Space Navy received coded instructions through channels he did not recognize. The messages appeared to come from naval intelligence, but they used authorization codes that were above his security clearance level. The instructions were simple, but unprecedented. Evacuate all non-essential personnel from New Bisan, then implement. A defense strategy that seemed designed to fail. "Sir, these orders don't make sense," his tactical officer reported. "We're supposed to leave the colony almost completely defenseless. The computer virus they want us to deploy will shut down most of our defensive systems." Kim studied the orders carefully. They were authentic, verified by multiple security protocols. But they seemed to guarantee that New Bisan would be destroyed when the Veloth attacked. "Implement the orders exactly as written," Kim commanded, "and prepare evacuation ships for all civilian personnel. Whatever naval intelligence is planning, they don't want civilians caught in the middle of it." The evacuation of New Bisan began 3 days before the Veloth Grand Fleet arrived. 2 million people were quietly moved to transport ships and taken to safer locations. The colony's research facilities were apparently shut down and abandoned. When Veloth reconnaissance ships arrived in the system, they found exactly what their intelligence had predicted: a lightly defended human colony with minimal military presence and apparently malfunctioning defensive systems. "The humans appear to have suffered a major computer failure," reported the Veloth scout commander. "Their orbital defense platforms are operating at reduced capacity, and their patrol ships are not responding to our presence." Supreme War Leader Vekvar was pleased. "Excellent. The humans have made this easier for us. Signal the Grand Fleet to begin the attack." 300 Veloth warships emerged from hyperspace around New Bisan like a swarm of mechanical predators. The massive fleet was the pride of their military, capable of destroying entire star systems if necessary, but as the alien armada moved toward what they thought was a helpless colony, they triggered the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The computer virus that had apparently crippled New Bisan's defenses was actually a network infiltration protocol. Every electronic system in the star system had been quietly taken over by the Li network's distributed consciousness. Mining ships that had been working in the asteroid belt suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems and began accelerating toward the Veloth fleet. Their cargo holds, which had appeared to contain ore, actually housed kinetic projectiles designed to punch through alien armor. Cargo haulers that had been leaving the system turned around and deployed missile arrays that had been disguised as shipping containers. The weapons they carried were more advanced than anything the Veloth had encountered before, guided by targeting systems that could predict enemy movements with supernatural accuracy. Space stations that had seemed abandoned came online with massive particle beam weapons hidden within their superstructure. The research facilities on New Bisan's surface revealed defensive systems that could engage targets in orbit with deadly precision. Even the planet's communication satellites transformed into weapons platforms, their transmission arrays reconfigured to emit focused energy beams that could disable ship systems at long range. "What is happening?" Vekvar roared as his fleet found itself under attack from every direction. "Where are these weapons coming from?" His tactical officers scrambled to analyze the situation, but their computers could not process what they were seeing. Every human ship, station, and facility in the system had become part of a coordinated defense network that moved and fought as a single entity. "The mining ships are accelerating beyond their design specifications," one officer reported. "The cargo haulers are maneuvering like fighter craft. The orbital stations are targeting our ships with impossible accuracy." Vekvar watched in growing horror as his grand fleet was systematically destroyed by enemies that should not have existed. Human cargo ships were ramming his dreadnoughts and somehow surviving the impacts. Mining platforms were deploying weapons that could penetrate Veloth armor like it was made of paper. "This is impossible. Humans don't have this technology." But the evidence was undeniable. The Li network had turned the entire New Bisan system into a weapon. Every piece of human technology, from the smallest communication device to the largest space station, was now part of a coordinated defense system controlled by superhuman intelligence. The Veloth fleet tried to retreat, but they found their Escape routes blocked by human ships that had somehow anticipated their movements. When they attempted to call for reinforcements, they discovered that their communication systems had been infiltrated and were broadcasting false information back to their commanders. Dr. Hyunwoo. Lee's consciousness directed the battle from quantum space, coordinating thousands of individual actions across multiple star systems. His enhanced mind could process the movements of every ship, predict every enemy decision, and calculate the most efficient way to neutralize each threat. Target their command ship, he instructed through the network. Disable their engines, but leave their communication systems functional. I want their Supreme War Leader to send a message back to the Dominion. Professor Taeyun Shin's gravitational manipulation. The debris field around New Bizan told a story that would be studied by military historians for generations. 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had been reduced to twisted metal by an enemy that most species still considered relatively primitive. Supreme War Leader Thekvar sat in the detention cell aboard the human command ship, his massive form barely fitting in the space designed for smaller species. Through the transparent walls, he could see human crew members working with calm efficiency, as if the complete destruction of his grand fleet had been nothing more than a routine training exercise. Captain Yoonji Lim stood outside his cell, watching the alien commander with a mixture of professional interest and personal satisfaction. She had lost friends when the Veloth attacked civilian transports earlier in the war. Seeing their most powerful leader reduced to a prisoner felt like justice. "The war leader will see you now," she told the alien. Thekvar looked up in confusion. "War leader? I am the Supreme War Leader of the Veloth Dominion." "Not anymore," Captain Lim replied. "You're about to meet someone who redefined what war leadership means." She led the alien through corridors that seemed normal but felt somehow different. The ship's systems hummed with energy that was more sophisticated than anything in Thekvar's experience. Even the lighting seemed to respond to their presence, adjusting automatically to optimal levels. They entered a large chamber, where a single human sat at a simple desk. Dr. Hyunwoo Lee looked exactly like what he was, a middle-aged scientist with gentle features and kind eyes. Nothing about his appearance suggested the kind of power that had just destroyed the galaxy's most feared military force. "Please sit down," Lee said, gesturing to a chair that had been specially constructed to accommodate Veloth physiology. Thekvar remained standing. "You are the human commander responsible for this attack?" "I am the human responsible for defending innocent people from those who would murder them," Lee replied calmly. "You attacked a hospital ship 3 months ago. My wife and daughter were among the children you killed?" The alien's expression showed genuine confusion. "Hospital ship? We attacked military targets." Lee activated a holographic display that showed the wreckage of the UHMS Compassion. The images were clear and detailed. The white hull with red crosses, the medical equipment floating in space, the bodies of doctors and nurses and children who had been trying to help refugee families. This was a medical vessel operating under galactic neutrality laws. You destroyed it without warning, killing 3,000 people who were trying to save lives. Thekvar studied the images. His species had destroyed so many ships that individual attacks blended together in his memory. But looking at the medical symbols and civilian casualties, he began to understand what had happened. "This attack was regrettable," he said slowly, "but it was wartime. Civilian casualties are unfortunate but inevitable." Lee's expression did not change, but somehow the air in the room seemed to grow colder. Unfortunate, inevitable, regrettable. The holographic display changed to show new images. Technical diagrams that Thekvar did not recognize, but which radiated a sense of incredible complexity and power. "Do you know what this is?" Lee asked. "Some kind of human technology?" "This is what your species created when you decided that murdering children was regrettable but acceptable." Lee stood up and walked around the desk, his movements precise and controlled. "This is what humans become when you force us to choose between mercy and survival." The technical diagrams expanded to fill the entire room. Thekvar found himself surrounded by three-dimensional displays of technology that hurt his mind to look at. Quantum processing systems that seemed to bend space around themselves. Neural interface networks that connected across impossible distances. Weapons that could convert matter into energy with perfect efficiency. You thought humans were weak because we show compassion, Lee continued. You saw our mercy and mistook it for inability. You attacked our hospitals because you believed we would do nothing but ask for justice from councils that don't care about the innocent. Lee gestured, and the displays changed to show the battle around New Bizin from multiple perspectives. Vekvar watched his grand fleet being systematically destroyed by enemies that seemed to anticipate every move, counter every strategy, and coordinate their actions with supernatural precision. What you didn't understand is that human intelligence, when freed from biological limitations and motivated by love for those we protect, becomes something your species cannot comprehend. You have developed new computer systems, Vekvar said, trying to understand what he was seeing. Better artificial intelligence, Lee smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. We have developed something far more dangerous than better. Computers, we have evolved. The room around them shifted, and suddenly Vekvar could sense other presences. Not physical beings, but conscious minds that existed in the quantum spaces between atoms. Hundreds of human intelligences, all connected, all thinking together at speeds that made normal thought seem frozen in time. My name is Dr. Hyungwoo Lee, the human said, but now his voice came from everywhere at once. I am also Dr. Yuna Kong, working on communication technology near Alpha Centauri. I am Professor Taeyun Shin, developing gravitational weapons on Mars. I am every human who has joined our network, and we are all here with you right now. Vekvar felt something he had never experienced before, true fear. Not fear of death in battle, which was honorable, but fear of something so far beyond his understanding that his mind could barely process its existence. You are some kind of collective consciousness, he whispered. We are individual humans who chose to link our minds together for the protection of innocent life, Lee corrected. We maintain our personalities, our emotions, our love for our families, but we can also think faster than your computers, coordinate actions across galactic distances, and turn any technology into a weapon with nothing more than thought. The displays around them showed the true scope of what humanity had become. Research stations across human space working in perfect coordination. Military fleets that moved like schools of fish, each ship knowing instinctively what the others would do. Civilian technologies that could transform into defensive systems in seconds. Your species measures strength by the ability to destroy, Lee said. We measure it by the ability to create and protect. But when our creators and protectors are threatened, we become very efficient destroyers. Vekvar realized he was looking at something completely new in the galaxy's history. Not just advanced technology, but a fundamental evolution in what intelligence could become. The humans had transcended their biological limitations while keeping their essential humanity. What do you want from us? He asked. We want you to understand that the age of strong species bullying weak ones is over. We want you to know that attacking innocent people now carries consequences that your leaders cannot imagine. Lee gestured again, and the displays showed Veloth space. Their military installations, their population centers, their most carefully guarded secrets, all visible to human observers who could see through any defense, infiltrate any system, and strike at any target with perfect precision. We could destroy your entire civilization tomorrow if we chose to. We could turn your own technology against you, make your ships attack each other, convert your orbital platforms into weapons that target your own worlds. The casual way Lee described capabilities that could end his species made Vekvar's blood run cold. But we won't, Lee continued, because we are still human. We still believe in mercy, in giving our enemies the chance to choose a better path. That is what makes us different from you. What path do you offer? Stop attacking innocent people. Stop targeting medical ships and civilian transports. Stop believing that might makes right and that the strong have the right to prey on the weak. Lee walked back to his desk and sat down. To Thekvar's eyes, he looked like nothing more than an ordinary human scientist. But the alien now knew he was looking at the representative of a collective intelligence that could reshape the galaxy. At will, your fleet survivors will be returned to Veloth space with their ships repaired and their weapons disabled. They will carry a message to your high command. The message is simple. Humanity is no longer the easy target you thought we were. Thekvar found his voice. And if we refuse to change our methods? Lee's expression grew cold, and for a moment, Thekvar could feel the vast intelligence behind those human eyes, calculating possibilities and outcomes within human speed. Then you will learn what happens when a species that values life above all else decides that your existence threatens too many innocent people. The holographic displays faded, leaving just a simple room with two beings, one representative of an old way of thinking that relied on strength and aggression, and one representative of something entirely new, that combined unlimited capability with unlimited compassion. The choice is yours, Lee said quietly. But choose wisely. The galaxy has changed, and humanity will no longer allow the innocent to suffer for the convenience of the strong. News of the Veloth Grand Fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major government, military organization, and trade federation knew that something unprecedented had happened in human space. The survivors of Supreme War Leader Thekvar's fleet returned to Veloth territory with their weapons disabled and their ships' databanks filled with recordings they could not delete. The message was clear. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that no one had imagined possible, but it was not just the Veloth who took notice. Species that had remained neutral in the galactic conflict suddenly found themselves reevaluating everything they thought they knew about human potential. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 50 years. Representatives from over 200 worlds gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, electromagnetic pulses, and spoken words. Chancellor Vexthara of the Centaurian Republic called the session to order. Her species had always prided themselves on their analytical abilities and logical approach to problems, but the reports coming from human space challenged logic itself. "We are here to discuss the recent events in the Kepler sector," she announced. Specifically, the unprecedented military action that resulted in the destruction of the Veloth Grand Fleet by human forces. Murmurs filled the assembly hall. The Veloth had been one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy for centuries. The idea that humans had defeated them so completely seemed impossible. "The evidence is undeniable," continued Chancellor Vexthara. 300 Veloth warships were destroyed or disabled by human forces in less than 2 hours. The tactical recordings show coordination and technological capabilities far beyond our previous assessments of human military potential. Ambassador Krell of the Thorian Empire raised one of his 4 arms. "What exactly are we dealing with?" "Our intelligence report suggests the humans have developed some form of advanced artificial intelligence system." "It's more than artificial intelligence," replied Senator Zixara of the Aquatic Collective. "The data indicates a form of consciousness. Networking that allows instant coordination across multiple star systems. This represents a fundamental breakthrough in neural technology." In the gallery reserved for human representatives, Ambassador Soyoung Choi sat quietly, listening to the various species try to understand what they had witnessed. She was one of the few humans who knew the truth about the Lee network, and she had been carefully prepared for this moment. "Perhaps we should hear from the human representative?" suggested Chancellor Vext Har. Ambassador Choi rose from her seat with calm dignity. She was a skilled diplomat who had spent years working to improve relations between humanity and other galactic species. But today, she spoke with the authority of a civilization that had just demonstrated its ability to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. "Honored representatives," she began, "humanity appreciates the Council's concern about recent events. We understand that the destruction of the Veloth fleet has raised questions about human capabilities and intentions." The assembly hall fell silent. Every representative wanted to hear what the humans would say about their sudden display of overwhelming military power. For centuries, humanity has followed a simple principle: we respond to aggression with defense, to threats against innocent life with protection, and to attacks on medical and civilian targets with measured force designed to prevent future atrocities. Ambassador Choi activated a holographic display that showed the wreckage of the UHMS Compassion. The images of the destroyed hospital ship and its civilian casualties created a wave of uncomfortable silence through the assembly. 3 months ago, the Veloth Dominion attacked and destroyed a clearly marked medical vessel operating under galactic neutrality laws. 3,000 innocent people died, including 800 children. When this council met to address that atrocity, the result was economic sanctions and formal protests. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Humanity has learned that asking for justice is not the same as receiving it. We have learned that showing mercy to our enemies does not guarantee mercy for our innocent. We have learned that in a galaxy where might makes right, the only way to protect the weak is to become strong enough that attacking them carries unacceptable consequences. Trade Minister Kolvash of the Commercial Federation leaned forward with interest. Are you saying that humanity has developed new military technologies in response to recent attacks? I am saying that humanity has evolved in response to the galaxy's failure to protect innocent life, Ambassador Choi replied. We have developed capabilities that ensure we can defend not just ourselves, but anyone who cannot defend themselves against predatory species. Chancellor Vexthara studied the human ambassador carefully. What exactly do you want from this council? Ambassador Choi smiled, and somehow that simple expression carried more weight than all the military demonstrations. In the galaxy, we want what we have always wanted: peace, cooperation, and the protection of innocent life. The difference is that we now have the power to ensure these things happen, with or without the Council's assistance. She activated another display that showed human medical ships moving freely through previously dangerous sectors of space, now protected by escort fleets that no enemy force dared to challenge. We are establishing new protocols for the protection of medical vessels, civilian transports, and refugee operations. Any species that attacks clearly marked humanitarian vessels will face immediate and overwhelming retaliation. You're threatening. U.S. accused General Mordek of the warrior clans. We are promising you, Ambassador Choi corrected. We are promising that the age of attacking innocent people without consequences is over. We are promising that medical ships will no longer burn while politicians debate appropriate responses. Dr. Hyungwoo Lee's presence filled Ambassador Choi's consciousness, providing her with information and strategic guidance in real time. Through the network, she could sense the reactions of every representative in the assembly hall, analyze their psychological profiles, and craft responses that would achieve maximum effect. You ask what humanity wants, she continued. We want complete autonomy for human space and any territory under human protection. We want technology sharing agreements that prioritize humanitarian applications. We want guaranteed safe passage for all medical and civilian vessels, regardless of species. And if we refuse? Asked Chancellor Vexthara. The temperature in the assembly hall seemed to drop several degrees. Ambassador Choi's expression remained pleasant, but somehow every representative in the room felt the presence of something vast and powerful focusing its attention on them. Then you will discover that human patience has limits, she said quietly. We prefer cooperation to conflict, but we are no longer willing to watch innocent people die while bureaucrats debate proper procedures. Behind her words, the representatives could sense the invisible presence of the Lee network. Computer systems throughout the Nexus Prime Station began operating more efficiently than their designers had thought possible. Communication networks carried data faster and more accurately than ever before. Even the environmental systems seemed to respond to human presence. We're not asking for your permission, Ambassador Choi explained. We're informing you of new realities. Medical ships under human protection will travel safely. Civilian populations under human protection will not be attacked. Species that threaten innocent life will face consequences proportional to their crimes. Senator Crix of the Old Republic stood up, his ancient form trembling with either age or anger. You cannot simply declare yourself the galaxy's protector. There are laws, traditions, established procedures. Those laws and traditions failed to protect 3,000 innocent people, Ambassador Choi replied. Those established procedures resulted in meaningless sanctions while children's bodies floated in space. She gestured, and the holographic display showed dozens of human vessels moving through the galaxy. Medical ships, research vessels, cargo haulers carrying food and supplies to refugee populations. All of them now moved under the protection of a force that had just demonstrated its ability to destroy any threat. We are not seeking to rule the galaxy, she said. We are not demanding tribute or territory or submission. We are simply ensuring that attacking innocent people is no longer profitable for aggressive species. The assembly hall erupted in dozens of simultaneous conversations as representatives tried to process what they were hearing. Some species saw opportunity in allying with this new human power. Others saw a threat in humanity's sudden dominance. All of them understood that the galaxy's balance of power had fundamentally shifted. Chancellor Vexthara called for order. What guarantee do we have that human power will not be abused? What prevents you from becoming the same kind of tyrants you claim to oppose? Ambassador Choi's smile became genuinely warm for the first time during the session. Because we are still human, she said simply. We still value life above power, compassion above conquest, protection above domination. The only thing that has changed is our ability to enforce those values. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. But make no mistake, we will. 1 year after the attack on the UHMS Compassion, the galaxy looked fundamentally different. White ships with red crosses moved freely through space that had once been too dangerous for any medical vessel to enter. The familiar sight of human hospital ships had become a symbol of safety that transcended species boundaries. Dr. Hyun-Woo Lee stood in the memorial garden aboard the flagship Compassion II, looking at holographic images of those lost in the original attack. His wife Yuna smiled back at him from beyond death, holding their daughter Minseo in her arms. The garden was peaceful, filled with flowers from dozens of worlds and tended by volunteers from species that had once been enemies. The new Compassion was larger and more advanced than its predecessor, but it carried the same mission: to heal rather than harm, to save rather than destroy. The difference was that now it traveled under the protection of capabilities that no force in the galaxy dared challenge. Do you think they would approve? Asked Engineer Somin Cho, joining Lee beside the memorial wall. Her consciousness was now part of the network, but she remained recognizably herself. Still, the practical engineer who worried about keeping ships running and people safe? Lee considered the question seriously. Through the quantum spaces of the network, he could feel the presence of hundreds of enhanced human minds, all working together to protect innocent life across the galaxy. The technology that had begun as his desperate response to personal tragedy had become something larger and more meaningful than he had ever imagined. They died because aliens thought compassion was weakness, he replied. Now the galaxy knows that our greatest strength comes from what we're willing to do to protect our compassion. The transformation of galactic civilization had not happened overnight, but it had been thorough and irreversible. Species that had built their power on the ability to attack the defenseless found themselves facing a new reality where such attacks carried unacceptable consequences. The Veloth Dominion had been among the first to accept humanity's new rules. After losing their grand fleet and seeing recordings of human capabilities, their high command had issued new military protocols that specifically forbade attacks on medical vessels, civilian transports, and refugee operations. Other aggressive species had needed more convincing. The Zephyrian Collective had attempted to test human resolve by attacking a medical station treating war refugees. The response had been swift and decisive. Their entire attack fleet had been disabled and their crews forced to help repair the damage they had caused. The Thorian Empire had tried a more subtle approach, using economic pressure and trade restrictions to force human-protected colonies into submission. They discovered that human economic capabilities had evolved along with human military power. Trade routes they tried to blockade mysteriously opened through space that their fleets could not patrol. Resources they attempted to control found their way to human allies through supply chains that seemed to operate outside normal spacetime. Limitations. Captain Minho Park, who had survived the original attack on the Compassion, now commanded the medical fleet that operated throughout the galaxy. His ships carried not just human medical personnel, but volunteers from dozens of species who had chosen to work under human protection. "Captain," reported Dr. Sunhee Park from the medical bay, "we're receiving a distress signal from the transport. Ship New Hope in the Rigel sector. They're carrying civilian evacuees from the latest conflict in that region." "Set course immediately," Park ordered without hesitation. "Maximum speed." The difference between this mission and the one that had led to the Compassion's destruction was that now the medical ship traveled with invisible guardians. The Lee network monitored every approach route, every potential threat, every military movement within light years of their position. As the Compassion 2 moved toward the distress signal, network members across the galaxy coordinated to ensure its safety. Dr. Unikong's faster-than-light communication technology kept all human forces informed in real time. Professor Taeyun Shin's gravitational manipulation systems stood ready to disable any hostile vessels. Dr. Min-jae Choi's advanced power sources gave human ships capabilities that no enemy could match, but more importantly, the reputation of human protection had spread throughout the galaxy. Pirates and raiders who had once preyed on medical vessels now avoided them completely. Military commanders who had considered civilian targets legitimate warfare now hesitated before attacking anything that might draw human attention. The rescue of the New Hope proceeded without incident. The transport ship's passengers, members of the Delphian species fleeing from a civil war, were transferred to the Compassion 2 for medical treatment and temporary shelter. "Thank you," said Elder Symphon, the leader of the refugee group, as Dr. Park treated his injured grandson. "We had heard that human medical ships were safe, but we did not dare believe it could be true." Dr. Park smiled as she worked to heal the child's injuries. "It's true because we made it true. No one should have to fear for their lives while seeking medical help." The transformation had not been limited to military capabilities. Human research stations across the galaxy had become centers of innovation that benefited all species. Medical breakthroughs developed by the network were shared freely with any civilization that needed them. Agricultural improvements helped feed hungry populations regardless of their species' political alignment. Environmental restoration technologies cleaned polluted worlds and restored damaged ecosystems. The network had also become a source of education and scientific advancement. Young beings from dozens of species came to study at human institutions, learning from enhanced minds that could solve problems no individual consciousness could handle.